we are with a specialist in Mastantuono Real, mainly international football for a long time. And also, old friend, Jose David Lopez, with whom I say, let's see if at some point we do something. As he told me off camera, who would have told us that we would be talking about a 17-year-old kid who, when we first met, Jose David, this kid maybe was what, around 8 or 9 years old? How are you, dude?
Yes, maybe not even that. Anyway, delighted, Miguel, to be here on your channel with you. And honestly, yes, just think that. We have talked many times, exchanged a lot of opinions on work-related, personal, and other topics. But the reality is that in the end, a guy arrives here who makes so much noise in football that he ends up bringing us together from thousands of kilometers away. These things are wonderful and truly show that football is above everything else.
Well, yes, you've made a fantastic thread. Well, let's go. Jose David Lopez, better known as El Enganche, has been talking about international football in the media for a long time, and very well, by the way. He's one of those crazy ones who stays up till early morning watching River matches. And in this case...
Just today, watching Mastantuono's debut, I had to commentate on 2 South American qualifying matches. First, Brazil's, and until 5 in the morning when Mastantuono and the Argentine team finished playing in Chile, well, that's where we were. So yes, when you have what you have and you're dedicated to it, and thank God, professionally, I can do it, I'm very delighted.
Well, let's see. You've been following him longer than the public in general. Did you know that this guy was going to become, well, what he already has? Because the other day I read that he's a key and fundamental player at River. He just joined the national team, but because at 17 years old, well, he couldn't have been standing out there for a year, but he is a fundamental piece at River, right?
Yes, totally. Let's see. Now, it's true that Mastantuono's emergence has happened now, but it's also true that among those of us who follow River, I am lucky that beyond international football, obviously, out of pure professionalism, and then I follow all the lower division tournaments. So in the case of Mastantuono, through the South American Under-17 Championships, the South American Under-20 Championships, the Under-17 World Cup that he played at the end of the year 2023. I had already been watching him a long time ago. And since I also support River, because it's my team from which I watch all the matches, most of them live at dawn and such, well, truly, I've watched him from day one. The 61 matches he's played with River and the 14 that I have been able to watch with the Argentina's lower divisions. That leads me to think that, answering your question, we did expect Mastantuono to arrive sooner or later. It is true that River has a batch, and in the thread that you mentioned them, a group that is spectacular from the point of view of having emerged practically all at once. It's a group that includes Subiabre, who is currently also at River and is starting to play. There's Roberto, who was the forward from those youth teams of Argentina, who unfortunately at the beginning of this season in the South American Under-20 tournament injured his knee, and that's why he is not playing. Otherwise, we would also be talking about him. And the one who stood out the most among them was Echeverri, the little devil Echeverri, Piazza in Saisai, the purest playmaker, who among this group of kids, all from River, and who carried the absolute weight in the Argentine youth teams, was the one who stood out the most because he was the leader, the one who took the free kicks, the one who made the difference, the one who scored the most goals also. And City took him in a context very similar to that of Mastantuono. What's happening, Miguel? Mastantuono is 1 year younger than this. And even so, he was growing alongside them a little at the same time. It's true that because of this, Mastantuono, within this group, he was the substitute. For example, he plays in the South American Under-17 Championship with this group, but he is the youngest, so the substitute. He plays in the Under-17 World Cup of 2023, where this Argentina captures the heart of the entire country. And there, everyone... He says, watch out for these guys. They are truly going to be very important. But Mastantuono was the substitute. And until a few months ago, Miguel, this perfectly exemplifies what football is like, how everything accelerates. And even if you think a kid can stand out, suddenly certain things happen that distort everything. And for Mastantuono, everything that has happened in this 2025 has turned out positive. He starts 2025 in the South American Under-20 in January, which is always the beginning of the season. So we have to keep in mind that we need to change the mindset a bit because there they play in the natural season, the calendar year. Here it's not like that. Here we know it's from August to June. In Argentina, the first thing every season is the South American Under-20 Championship in January. This practically brings together all the best young players. Well, Mastantuono from this Argentine group is a substitute. In all the matches, he's a substitute, and it doesn't seem that he's going to break through yet. What happens? That already last year at River, he ends up with Gallardo. De Michelis gives him his debut at the start of last season, but he is entering very sporadically, a little bit of preserving sensation, gaining a bit more strength. The project ends with Miguel is now who surely River had an expiration date. Dafona Pirpata, get plastic one in oh, it's unknown what will happen with Gallardo. Gallardo does not rely on him too much when 2024 ends, but when it begins, 2025, he just finished the South American Under-20, where I insist he doesn't have much prominence, but directly he is given the team. And practically for about 3 months, if we want to be exact, for about 3 months, he starts being a key starter and already a franchise player for Novo River. So much a franchise player, Miguel, that in recent weeks, he has even started taking the penalties himself. So imagine the leadership he has taken on.
And the free kicks, which have left us with 2 or 3 incredible gifts here, right? From a friend of River, an Argentine friend of River, very much of River, who talks to me about the difference with the change of coach for him for the better. Well, you've more or less told us, but to the point that with the Michelis, it's no longer so. No, he couldn't find the point with this guy, and Gallardo has indeed known how to direct him on the right path.
Let's see. But the issue is that Gallardo, since he represents what Gallardo represents, having won 2 Libertadores with River and reached another final, and that he is a god, basically. So what happened? That the Micheli was not given everything that demanded. Since the Micheli project didn't go well, it didn't succeed in the league, but not in the Libertadores, which is required. It's not enough. Like Madrid in Europe, it's not enough to win the league. They need to do very well in their champions, which is the Libertadores. It didn't all go well for him. That's why Gallardo arrives, and they do give Gallardo the chance. Come on, let's start a project. Since you come in halfway through the season, as soon as the course ends, let's try to rise next year. So tell me tell me a bit about the structure you want to follow, Par. And that main structure, it was Mastantuono's turn to take a step forward. Why? Because Echeverri, as I said, the other guy from his group had been sold to River last year. Was in a situation where things went very poorly from the academy because they tried to renew. The kid got a bit overconfident, and by the final stretch, he wasn't speaking too well anymore. He had already assumed he was going to leave, that he was already a mini star and everything, that Gallardo wanted to take him from the a little. He finishes last season with him playing little by little, but he knew that as soon as the calendar year started, the season would count on him. That's the difference. No, clearly he has been given balls since he returned from the South American Under-20. The first 2 games he plays as a substitute, afterward always a starter. No, he has placed him where he wants, removed the competitors in that area because Barco is no longer there, because Solari is no longer there. Few are players that took away minutes, or at least would have put him a bit more in competition, and directly sticks him to the right wing, gives him absolute freedom to cut inside diagonally, which is his signature move. And from there, the scandal of a player he is, the difference he's making, began doing it in the league, in the cup, and in the end, even in the Libertadores. So it's key because Gallardo told him that Tasami will function based on 2-3 players, and you are going to be right now the new gem of River. So much had been promised to him, and here is something that hurts River a lot. And as a diehard River fan, it also pains me that they had promised Gallardo he would stay until the end of this term, that is in December, and yet they won't be able to fulfill that promise.
Of course, because, we are recording this on Friday afternoon, and it's likely to come out Saturday morning. So far, we know he will play the Club World Cup with River. When it ends, he will already join Real Madrid, and they won't be able to fulfill that dream at River of having him until the end of the year, which is the end of the season there in Argentina, right?
To give us an idea, Miguel, whenever we are talking about Real Madrid here, everyone listening to this interview, imagine what would happen if in January, in our January market, directly comes, Manchester City, and they want to take the Vinicius from a year and a half ago, in the middle of the season, when you are fighting for the league, and especially for the Champions League, which is their Copa Libertadores. Clearly, it would destroy you. The team. Well, River has been suffering from this year after year. They tried to avoid it with Mastantuono, but in 3 months, we've already given the kid a renewal. Obviously, they renewed him a few months ago. Now we've added more money. It is something that River always asks for. They tried with Echeverri. They managed, because whenever River sells his pearls, they at least manage to leave in December. But with Mastantuono, it has been such an evolution in such a short time that it has practically not given River any room to maneuver, and will probably lose him.
Sure, and since PSG got involved, Madrid said, then this one won't get away from me, and that's why there's so much urgency, right? You've set it up very well for me to go back, to revisit the topic of whether he has to play more on the right, if it's his best position and such, in relation to what Xabi Alonso is going to do with him and how he can fit into this Real Madrid. But before, you've been mentioning in your thread about tennis, right? Because he's a boy who had to choose, since he was going to be a big tennis star in Argentina.
He is from a city called Azul, which is not too big. It's in the center of what is the province of Buenos Aires, not Buenos Aires itself, but in the province. And in that area, there are some tennis academies that they have been quite strong. He starts in football at 3 years old, but also in tennis. It also happens that when he has to choose between one sport and another, he was the 10. He was in the top 5, but at that moment, more or less among the top 10 in Argentina at that age. That is to say, he was clearly at a point where if he truly wanted to go professional in tennis, we would probably now be talking about one of the gems or promises of Argentine tennis. What ultimately tipped the scale and led him to choose football was that when he had to choose at the same time, River Plate offered him to do some tryouts. In those tryouts, evidently, River praises him, showers him with whatever they can, with their best wing to take him, and from there he decides that it will be to River where he goes from a very young age. So he was about to have gone down another path, which I have no doubt, because of his personality, because of his leadership, that he would have done very well there too.
Yes, as the Argentinians would say, a fachero, right? That he has a good look from a good family, right? And he's a kid. Look, the other day someone compared him with Nadal chose tennis and this kid chose soccer, but he's one of those kids that maybe we've all seen them. We've all had one in class or in the soccer school where we played as kids. The typical one who's good at everything, right? Who played everything well. I had one, who played soccer, volleyball, and tennis well. He was and this one seems like that, doesn't he?
He liked tennis there, and in his city there was already a good school for it. And his dad, moreover, was a coach from the neighborhood team where he started. Well, in the end, it was all about soccer, it was tennis, and he had quite a bit of ability to have competed at the first level. It is true that in the end, I understand that football, if you are from River, especially in his case, because he has been from River since he was little. In fact, the first team Juan plays for is called River Plate from Azul, which is the city where he was born. So clearly, the moment River proposes something serious, well, football is football, and his heart was drawn to it.
Damn, but it's amazing. This is a photo from the year 2019, which is like the day before yesterday, man.
Of course, man, it's amazing. Yeah, that's why I say I explained it well in the thread that I always try to develop to make people see that there can or cannot be much journey before what we are telling now, because this guy is still a kid. He is totally a kid when he debuts in River. He is the youngest to debut in the history of River at 16 years old. Yesterday, he became the youngest to debut with Argentina in all of history at 17. There can't be much more before that. That's why in the thread, I told that story of reinforced concrete, which is that photo we're seeing there. He's the one next to the goalkeeper at the top, the blonde one, next to the darker-skinned goalkeeper in yellow. And truly, it is that demonstration that the journey has been so immediate. When you suddenly see stories and say, that this was so recent that you can't have a great development yet to tell his little anecdotes. And that catches my attention a lot. And what comes right after this for me, Miguel, is super powerful, because there are even videos of him made when he opened his own YouTube channel. So we now...
Look, here it is. Of course.
Incredible.
Let's see it, because this is from how long ago? Let's see. Hold on, because there's a little song here.
That was 6 years ago.
6 years ago, man. Hear this face. Look. Hold on, I have the volume turned down here. Here it goes.
I'm going to tell you a little about what my channel is about. It will be about soccer, play games, Clash Royale, and I'll try to upload videos every day. Well, see you in the next one. Goodbye.
It makes me laugh a lot. He reminds me a lot of my son. I want to create a PlayStation gaming channel.
And there they are. They're standing in front of the camera, doing it any way they can. But doing it, which is what matters, daring to do it and being able to do it. That also shows that personality. And of course, when you realize this was 6 or 7 years ago, there can't be much more of a path. It's another generation, a different world. And this group of kids who are incredibly talented at soccer, beyond that, they are still just kids. It's a pure reality.
Well, you keep talking here about his growth from when he debuted with the Argentine national team, etc. The Under-17 World Cup, and in that great generation. Hey, of course, because you were talking about Echeverri. It's just that Echeverri, my Argentine friend from River, was telling me about him. When one skips steps, perhaps in their development, this kid has reached Manchester City and has played. How many minutes has he played? Very few, right?
Nothing. He played the other day, as in the F Cup final, for a few minutes and couldn't. He was in the middle of adapting. I also say this here in the thread, trying in some way for people to understand better. Giving importance to getting it right. in the adventure you choose in the first steps. Also, see now South American players, especially Argentinians, are used to the idea that if they shine, they will go to Europe. That's for sure. But there are many ways to go to Europe and many teams to go to. The youngest do not always make the right choice, and I still think it's more important to have playing time than to choose a big team. With this may be the case where Mastantuono is choosing an immense challenge for himself right now, but Echeverri, we see, has the perfect example of how he wanted to take the step directly to City, and it is costing him a lot. It's true that the adaptation in Echeverri's case, well, as I said, he arrived in the month of December because River did manage for him to leave at the end of the season, unlike Mastantuono, who is going now. It was much harder to adapt with the season already on the way. And on top of that, then the situation City was in didn't help bring in new faces. On going from Buenos Aires to Manchester must also be a very complex experience for such a young boy. And it's true that in this group, the one who stood out, the reality is Mastantuono was very good. Roberto and Subiabre too, but the one who was an absolute crack when you watched him play was Echeverri. And among these four, when you watched him in the Under-17 World Cup of 2023, which I watched, I wanted to show it in the thread, as I had already talked about them. The one who really called the shots so people could know was Echeverri. But it is true that the situation of this River group brought into the Argentine generation made everyone in Argentina talk about these guys during that month. That is to say, from that point, Miguel, everyone focused on these four because these four were going to arrive so early.
Now in world soccer, their teams are already realities, European champion, American champion, Spain and Argentina. And what's coming from behind in terms of youth academies, also Spain and Argentina, is tremendous. Of course, it could happen like Echeverri, who perhaps rushed. It could happen like Vinicius, who arrived at Real Madrid at 18 and was developed slowly, as Lopetegui once said. Or it can happen like Yamal, who at 16 is already winning a Euro Cup, and at 17 right now is entering the race for the Ballon d'Or. And you see that just as one can be that exception like Jamal, or enter that group of players who at that age still are not there, who have a lot to learn and who can become the best footballers in the world, but over the course of 3, 4, or 5 years, as was the case with Vinny.
In the development of these kids, we already know that it often depends on a thread. I mean, there's an injury and it ruins everything. Just ask Ansu Fati. There's a bad choice during some stage of a project they join, which is not at a good moment, and it can give them the prominence they have, and the wire gets crossed, and truly they never get back up again. That is, being on edge is very difficult in the end for everything to go well. Each case is very particular. Echeverri had to do it, as I said, at the end of the season there, which means halfway through the season here, and with a City that was probably the worst version of recent times to present a fresh face, and for it to be the feeling, do it. And that has hurt him from the start. He can recover because he's very talented. There's also another case of a very young guy from Ecuador, Kendry Paez, who is a tremendous player, who Chelsea also signed, and the same thing happened as with Echeverri. In the middle of the season, he had to leave. He was already playing with the number 10 of Ecuador, as a starter with the number 10 of Ecuador at 16, 17 years old, an amazing player, and Chelsea signed him, and he also hasn't been able to play much because obviously adapting is very difficult for them. But I see something different here. It's true that Lamine Yamal, for me, is untouchable. He's another level, and also Lamine Yamal wouldn't be a good move for Real Madrid if they're trying to sign Mastantuono. If you want to compare it with the fact I also have my Yamal, because it would be bad for Mastantuono. Moreover, Lamine, you have to consider that he was born in context Barça, in context of La Masia, in context, I mean, the team is the youth project that's going to progress, and also with a series of teammates I've always known. When I reach the first team, I keep playing the same way with the same teammates. Suddenly, the aspect of Xavi arrives, even now with Flick and the whole generation of players. Young players gain prominence because his coach trusted him back to the sense. That is, everything has gone well for Lamine beyond being an outstanding player. But Mastantuono has taken a bit more risk, because he could have left a few months ago as well. However, he waited for River to really give him a significant role to demonstrate his immense talent. Echeverri didn't have as much consistency or as many minutes in important matches, even at River. He hasn't had them, almost nobody has. Mastantuono, I think, more by chance as well, not so much by his own decision, since he didn't stand out when he could during the Michelis project in the minutes given to him, but he waited for someone to give it to him a few months later. And what happened is that Gallardo gave him prominence, and he was able to make the most of it. What happens with this? That, to me, it seems more like the case you mentioned about Vinicius even to Rodrigo, because Vinicius and Rodrigo, when they come to Madrid, have already played many minutes in Santos and Flamengo. Maybe not with the impact of Mastantuono. I also have to tell you, I've seen them a lot. Also to Vinicius and Rodrigo. In fact, I made a bunch of threads back in the day about the two of them, about everything I had seen of them, and I can assure you that the impact of Vinicius and Rodrigo in Brazil was not equivalent to what Mastantuono has stirred up in a few months in Argentina. That is also true. That's why, for me, every aspect of these guys is different. Every journey is different. Mastantuono is going to take risks a lot. Beyond that, it seems to me he's a player who is taking a big risk by suddenly going to Real Madrid because it's a drastic change, and hopefully Real Madrid will give him minutes, because what Mastantuono cannot afford is not playing, as that would completely hold him.
No, just like that. Well, look, it's a perfect setup for where he could play. So where could Xabi Alonso put him? It's clear. It has been demonstrated. In all the highlights I've seen of Mastantuono's, I've seen him on the right wing, but he can play across the entire front of the half positioned, let's call it that. What I do see, for example, is some people say, no, it's just that he looks a lot like Güller. Wait, I mean, I think Mastantuono is faster than Güller. I think he dribbles more than Güller. The truth is, Güller, I think at Real Madrid, what should be done, I hope Xavi does it, is to move him back a little in position. I don't know if you see it like I do, that Güller could be a bit more of an interior and more Tantuo is nothing else.
Look, we are talking about guys who have a lot of talent, but in the end, they are somewhat victims or prisoners of the system and the project that each team has. No, that is what happened. They intended to place him as a winger from the start, when Güller always played inside because he is a pure playmaker. But Güller at Fenerbahce always played as a playmaker, and in the Turkish national team, he plays as a playmaker. What happens is that modern soccer forces you to position some players in another context or other roles because they have other missions from the coaches. Each one assigns a role, and evidently that's why I say to succeed with the fate that each one will have. Mastantuono is a right winger because he plays on the right, but he's very left-footed. And when I say very left-footed, that out of every 99, out of every 100 touches, 99 are with the left foot left. That is to say, he uses the right very little. It's all with the left, always having switcher, always with that power. Imbalance. He often looks for the diagonal shot going inside. It's his go-to move, or he'll do it 1,000 times, always finds the gap. And if he doesn't shoot, he combines inside, because in that he's got a privileged mind, because he combines really well inside, makes many 1-2s, can turn himself. He's a dribbler. Born, and above all, what I like most about him is that he shoots a lot from the second line, a lot. Every game, he always takes 2 or 3 shots. It is true that as he has gained authority and conviction, influence at Riva, he has taken a great sense of freedom in these regards and was already taking the shot, like the typical NBA player who knows when to take the shot. Definitive. Well, this role was already taking more emphasis directly, and I didn't like it at all. And that's why, among other things, I decided to launch the thread, because he does not play as a playmaker. People are saying that he can play inside. He can play inside, but we have not seen. He has only played briefly as a playmaker, and that was because in the specific context of certain matches, River played with 2 forwards, something they almost never do, but they played with 2 forwards. So instead of placing him on the wing, since it doesn't fit otherwise, Gallardo prefers to put him as a playmaker. But absolutely not. Absolutely not. He is a winger who has played 95% of the matches as a winger. Right? Because he left-footed, has incredible dribbling ability, does everything at a very high speed. It is true that for me, and here I put a but, because I have seen all the matches, and also, as a River fan that I am, sometimes it has frustrated me with what I am about to say, which is that he still does not always make the right choices. For me, many times he rushes and does not always make the right decision. He always lacks maybe giving one more touch. When it comes to finishing, he shoots a lot, but still doesn't always find the striking surface. Well, those kinds of things were maybe the only comparable of that age of Lamine Yamal, who has an accuracy percentage, a way of playing tremendously effective. Well, Mastantuono is at the lower point, just a little below, because he is not as developed. I insist, he's been playing in the elite for 3 months, Miguel. Of course, we are talking about a very fleeting and very early eruption.
However, hold on. Min Jamal is going to turn, she's now 17. She will turn 18 now in July, right? She turns 18. So Min Jamal is 1 month older than Mastantuono. The thing is, she's been in the elite for a longer time. Now that you mentioned decision-making, it took Vinicius a lot. It's taken many footballers a lot. To the point of being, exasperating, because I think Vini is, for me, a unique case in the history of world football. No, it's incredible how you can go from one point to the other extreme. I mean, but through work and all that. But in the case of Lamine Yamal, and I don't want to compare them because there are people from my audience.
Let's not compare ourselves, because we are going to crush Mastantuono.
Correct. But no, and also there are people. No, but you focus too much on Lamine. But right now, he is a bright point where well, I remember when he started, he also chose poorly in many situations, but that's due to youth and the lack of experience in pressured and elite matches, right? It's a matter of minutes, right?
Totally. It's just that Mastantuono himself in the first matches does not resemble at all the trajectory he's taken recently. In the last 3 months, which is truly the eruption, where he always plays as a starter, where he's untouchable, Mastantuono has started taking free kicks. In fact, he scored 2. The one with Boca, which is evidently what prompts the signing with Real Madrid. Let's not kid ourselves. That goal causes everything good he had done to suddenly multiply, maximize to tremendous levels. It happened to Higuain in his day when he scored a double against Boca at 18 years old, and in a little over a month later, he was signed by Madrid. I mean, I can't hide that. There's it's the goal you're showing there in the image. I chose that camera because the curve the ball makes seems absolutely crazy to me. How it goes up and then down. It's an incredible goal. Well, he scored another one also in the Argentine league. I can't remember the team right now, which it was, but he did tremendously, perfectly placed without rising much. Literally puts it into the top corner. Another spectacular goal to save.
I think I've seen it. Now, I don't have it here, but I think I've seen it too. Tremendous. Yes, very good.
It's right below, I think. Right below.
Let's see. I'll look for it here. It's like in a corner, right? In a corner of the area. I think I remember this one, right? There it is. Let's watch it. Wait, because there. Look, that one, right? Tremendous. Look at the goalkeeper. The man does what he can. But yes, no.
And look, it's true that we're talking about responsibility, but this guy has taken the reins of River with that setting we're seeing, because it's at the Monumental with 80,000 people every game, because it's the stadium that always has a sold out for over 2 years now. Everything is sold. There are no tickets available. Absolutely everything is sold. There is an incredible madness with River, and it didn't weigh on him. He started taking free kicks, nailed them, and in the last month and a half, he also started taking penalties. Just like Lamine Yamal did now in the Nations League, now they're taking it away from Al Sabah. Well, the same. That is, these types of guys are given the responsibility. They take it. They are not afraid. They go forward with everything and end up making a difference. The last 3 months have been the moment that turned Mastantuono into this.
Sorry now. No, I was muted. We'll see the evolution of Mastantuono at Real Madrid. I'll let you go since you're in a hurry. You're in high demand, man. It's just that now as some call you, the international football panenquitos. Damn, huh?
All my life. I mean, I see Miguel, and when he tells me that it's true, he has all the love in the world, but I laugh because I'm still the same dreamer or whatever as when I was 20 years old, right? For me, nothing has changed. I have exactly the same life.
No.
I go to bed at 5 in the morning watching Mastantuono to then share it with you, huh?
I can vouch that you have been crazy about this for a long time, man. Well, a big hug, Jose David Lopez. Thank you very much, man. Give a like to this video if you enjoyed it. Subscribe to the channel. And, well, maybe we can have you here another time analyzing, hoping that this guy has done well at Real Madrid, even though they bought him. I was going to say stolen, never stolen. They bought him from your River Plate.
I hope it goes well, as it will be good for all of us. Regards. Thank you, Miguel.
A hug. Bye-bye.